I tell a lot of people, like, oh, Celinne, she's amazing. There's some people you give them seed, they make a forest. With Celinne, you just saw where the seed is, and she'll do her thing. I don't know how she does it, but she'll do her thing. It's one of those people. I'm deeply honored and so happy to have witnessed the beginnings of that awakening for you. To see it unfold is even more amazing. Because I know, some people hear your story and they go, wow, it is significantly more amazing than people realize.
My aura at the time was just as pure as it is today. It's just that there was all this clutter that was obstructing me. At that time, that light was really starting to awaken within me. That light within me was awakening. At the time, my heart wasn't as open because at the time I was so emotionally disconnected from myself. And for me to be in my heart space for those 2 weeks completely reorganized me. And it was just compounding until it went boom. Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celinne Da Costa, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first podcast episode. Dun, dun, dun. So when I was thinking about what my first episode of my first podcast would be, I wanted to do something different. And, I had a lot of people say to me, oh, the first episode, it needs to be just a 3-minute clip so that just introducing the podcast so that, you can retain people's attention. And then I've had strategists tell me like, you should start this way. And this is the middle part and this is the end part. So there was a lot of suggestions as to how to start this podcast, how to kick this off. And in the spirit of what this podcast is actually here to do, which you'll get very clear on by the end of this episode, I wanted to do something different. And what came through, this was a brilliant thought that I had in the shower, where a lot of brilliant thoughts come, is that I wanted to actually be interviewed by somebody who knew me very, very well. Because I knew that if I were to just sit in front of this camera and record my first episode telling you, the listener, my story, I knew that there was a part of me, because this is new, because I've not really done this before, that would hide me from you. And so because I so deeply desire for this podcast to be the rawest, most authentic expression of me and wants to come through me, I wanted to fail-proof this one. So the thought that came in the shower was, what if I invite Ralph Ruiz, who is my original coach. And as some of you know, those of you who are new to me, coaching is my profession as well, to have him come in and interview me and poke me in all the places that I wouldn't have poked myself and ask me the questions that I probably wouldn't have thought to ask, and support me, hold space with me to share the things that I maybe not would have shared with you on the first go. And so today we have my very first guest interviewer, Ralph Ruiz, who is one of the most special human beings in my life. I met him before my journey started that you're going to be hearing all about today, of traveling around the world and, building a successful coaching career and all the beautiful things. You might have found me because you've heard of me and the work that I do and the career that I've built. So I'm not going to go into the accolades right now because you can go and see them all on my website and the show notes and all that jazz. Well, we're really going to dive into the deep, and he's somebody that I met, and before I even knew what coaching was, I had no idea that this was even a profession. I had definitely not even an inkling that this was a profession that I would be taking on for my soul service and my calling. And he has helped me so much with unlocking this piece of me of what I call my first wave of awakening into what life is actually meant to be, at least for me. And so he's going to be here today interviewing me. Ralph, thank you so much for coming in today. But would you be able to just, briefly introduce yourself to the listener, and then we're going to dive into the very, very first episode.
Thank you for having me here, Celine. I am excited to be here on the very first podcast, and I can't wait to see it all unfold and see it. Yeah, I'm just excited to see it all happen. So my name is Rafael Yanis Ruiz. Everyone just simply knows me as Ralph Ruiz. And, like we all have our stories. We all have our experiences. And I like to keep mine simple. I'm here. I'm present. I'm a professional life coach as well, like yourself. And I'm just here, just pretty much here. My brain doesn't go places. I'm just here pretty much. So that's all I have to say about myself.
One of this man's many gifts is his just absolute presence, absolute transformative, alchemical, Shiva-like presence that when he's with you, he's 150% with you. And so, Ralph, thank you so much for your presence. And I'm going to hand it over to you to kickstart this journey. Let's see where we go.
Let's do it. Let's get started. So basically, the reason why I'm here today is because I am what Celine calls the OG coach, the old coach. And basically, I was there at the very beginning of Celine's transformational journey. Basically, I was there before all of this is what it is today. And today we are going to explore the beginnings of that transformative experience. We may go back all the way to the precious and explore the very beginnings of Celine herself before we met. What was her life like? Which brings me to my first question. Maybe you can tell us how did it happen before we met? Who were you? How did it happen?
Who was I? Well, I think it's important first to give everybody a timeline of when this is. So we met around 2014. And this was about a year after I had graduated from university. And I was working in New York City as a brand strategist in an advertising agency. And at this point in my life, it was really interesting because I had about, a year and a half of doing the corporate New York City life under my belt. And I remember because of, the way that my childhood formed and my aspirations and my desires, oh my gosh, it was everything I ever thought I wanted to come to a big city like New York and be in a fancy corporate job at one of the top advertising agencies in the United States. Like there was even an article on Forbes to prove it. And there was so much prestigiousness and like wow factor and shininess in me being in this position in my life. And I had worked so freaking hard to get here. I had, worked my way through high school, worked my butt off in university so that I could get the good grades, so that I could be in a position where I could apply to a company like this and be accepted in the first place. And now I'm here in New York City. It's a year and a half, and the reality looked like me waking up at 6 a.m. every morning. And for any of you who know me, you know I do not like waking up that early at all. Waking up, dragging my butt to the gym while it's still dark outside, half of the year in the cold, and working out, going to the gym, coming home, quickly showering, getting ready, commuting to my job where I would get there around 9:30 a.m. and I would just hang out there working my butt off all over again until 7 p.m. at night. So I could come home, maybe go meet a friend for a drink, schedule, a date in or whatever it was that the thing that I needed to do so that I could at least squeeze one fun activity in before I came home exhausted at night, crashed, slept, did it all over again. And it looked like that for a year and a half. And I was really in the space of like, is this all there is? Is this the thing that I've been, investing the past 12 plus years of my life in creating for myself. And I remember meeting you, Ralph, in 2014 when I was in this very, very deep in this hamster wheel of the corporate life and realizing it was the beginning seeds of like, is this all there is? And I just remember like, oh man, I got to work out. And there's like too many free cookies and shit at the office, like starting to gain a little weight. I don't like this. And so I decided to invest in a personal trainer. And I said, okay, well, at least I'm going to do this for myself and work out a few times a week. And Ralph was that personal trainer. So I'm going to pause here and let you take over, Ralph, because you've got the other part of the story.
I remember that. That was when I was first starting my coaching practice. I was literally like right in the middle of that fitness training mentality, opening, awakening, shadow work, all that good stuff. And I remember when I first met Celinne, when I first met you, the first thought that came to mind was, wow, not in a way like, wow, she's beautiful or anything like that, but just your presence. There was something about your presence, the way you showed up to your workouts, to the gym, to the conversations, even the way you greet the person at the front desk at the gym. There was this aura, this energy that you carried with you. And it was one of those experiences for me where it was like, wow, and to this day, I tell a lot of people like, oh, Celinne, she's amazing. This amazing person. She's some people you give them a seed, they make a forest. With Celinne, you just saw where the seed is, and she'll do her thing. I don't know how she does it, but she'll do her thing. It's one of those people. So it makes me curious. Now that we're here, how did that aura develop? Where did that come from in your life? How did it happen? Was it something that you always had? Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. I was like, what a multidimensional question. This has layers. But because today is just the first episode, I'm not gonna get too deep into it. Ralph's like, another conversation for another time. Wink, wink. Yeah. So, it's funny because, now where it's 2014 and we're talking about 2014, we are at 2023. So it's almost been 10 years and I've shed so many layers since then. I've become I actually was about to say completely different person, but not, because I feel like I've just become more of who I am today. And, through this past conditioning shedding and through this becoming, that is really, what this podcast breaks down. For those of you who choose to stay with me throughout this journey, you're really going to see more of the how. But if we were to rewind to, 10 years ago, I always remember like having this light and being who I am now, that I can speak to it so confidently now, because I feel it in my body, like who I am. But back then, when I was so disconnected from myself, I didn't have this conviction. That feeling of like, when we say there's so much more to life, and I hear so many people say there's so much more to life, but I can feel there's so much more to life, but I don't know what it is.
Right.
That's what I actually perceive. It's like they feel the light, the essence of who they truly are in their soul, but there's so much conditioning that's just caked and just layered. And it's almost like they're like, and they're scratching the veil and they're seeing a little bit of that light. And they're like, oh my God, I know there's so much more. And they're scratching. Oh my God, there's so much more, right? But they don't really know how do I just break free and liberate myself from all of this conditioning. And so, to answer your question, Ralph, like my aura at the time was just as pure as it is today. It's just that there was all this clutter that was obstructing, me. And so, to go back to your question, Ralph, at that time, that light was really starting to awaken within me. My awareness of that life, of that light within me was awakening, right? And when we even talk about spiritual awakening, this was me scratching the veil of what else is out there and who am I? And so I was shining in that way. But again, it was one of those things where similar to, when you're on the radio and you're driving in the middle of the country and it's like you hear the song and then it's like, and then you hear the song again. It's like, nah, 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 nah. The Bruno Mars one came up first. I was like, can I come up with a more elegant song? Clearly it's going to be just this one. And then it goes like, and you're like, oh, come on. I was just getting into the chorus, and that's how I feel. Like I see a lot of people living their life that way. And it's like, there has to be a place that has better, more consistent service so I can like listen to this whole freaking song all at once and enjoy it all at once without this static. So back then it was like my little song was starting to come out, but it was a lot of static, and I wasn't able to access myself just in these small moments of lucidity. But other people could, like yourself, you could pick up on and I think which is what I love about you and what I love about me and our work as coaches is that part of our work and what we're trained to do is actually to see the light of the person beyond the static, beyond the clutter. And that's likely what you saw in me that I couldn't yet see in myself. But that was the beginning of the journey and the awakening.
That's right. It's like hearing a little piece of the chorus and knowing what song it is. It's like, oh yeah, I know that song, even though it goes back to static.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I know that song. Come on, radio. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I'm deeply honored and so happy to have witnessed the beginnings of that awakening for you. To see it unfold is even more amazing because I know, some people hear your story and they go, wow, that's amazing. But when they really see, how that song came together, how everything came together, it is significantly more amazing than people realize. I'm curious, during that time, I remember there was a lot of things going on, like you were planning to travel, something you wanted to do. Back then it was the Nomad's Oasis, your handle on Instagram. And I remember that was your dream to get out, to see the world, to experience life and experience yourself, the best way you knew how. I'm curious, what was the turning point for you at that time?
I love answering this question with you, Ralph, because unlike 99.9% of the people who could ask me this question, like you witnessed the answer. And so, for me, when you and we started to work out together, and I had no idea, like for me, you were my personal trainer. I had no idea what coaching was. I had no idea you were studying coaching. I just knew you asked me some really smart questions when we were working out together. And every time I'd leave, I was like, wow, those are really like some really mind stimulating questions. This is really making me think about life. And I think that's even like, 2014. Yeah. Like 3-4 years down the line when I realized that I was a coach at heart. I always this was the first model that I had as to what it really means to be that for someone. What does it mean to ask questions to another that sometimes we forget to ask ourselves because we've just disconnected from who we are and our intuition and our core essence. And so, the beginning of that, when I met you, I was in that space of, there's got to be something more to life. I cannot believe that I've just worked my ass off, like for pretty much the better portion of my adolescence and young adult life, just to be in a position where I'm living out the same game every day. And I'm definitely not doing the things that I'm passionate about, such as traveling and writing and getting my adventuring and meeting people. And so I was in this very stagnant space in my life where, I wasn't happy, but I didn't see a way out. I felt that there had to be a way out, but I would look around, and everywhere around me, I would just see other parts of my cage. I could not see even, like, I could see maybe the faint light of a window somewhere at times, but I couldn't. I was like a caged animal. And, but that inner knowing, that intuitive, like there has to be more, kept driving me. And so when you and I started speaking together, I remember that you would ask me these questions around, like, you know, first it was, what do you do? Why do you do it? It was just like, not just what do you do, but things like, I didn't remember exactly what you asked me, but it was along the lines of like, okay, why? And why is that? Why is this? And then I started to, the Pandora's box started to open. And I started to realize, my God, I actually have this really deep passion for traveling, which I've known this to be true, but I didn't realize how much it was burning inside of me. And I have this passion for growth and self-development and getting to know myself better, which I didn't feel like I was getting a lot of opportunities to work on when I was just day in, day out working on my advertising clients, working on marketing campaigns. Like my mind was so much just doing mental gymnastics all day that I didn't really have any time to tune into my heart space or ask myself what I want or how do I feel was definitely the last question that was on my list of like to-dos that day. And, I was in this space of starting to, question things. And through our time together, like we were for months, we were going through this sequence of coming in and me sharing with you, like, these are my frustrations for the day. I feel so stuck. I don't like this. Like, why are things like that? And just having you, coaching me through these really challenging situations in my life, from my dissatisfaction in the workplace. I remember we also talked, I was dating at the time, and you were talking to me a lot about love and what like love actually was and what it meant to, like, oh my God, this quote comes up. You literally said this to me in 2015, and I don't know why it's coming up right now, but it's being pulled out of my subconscious, which is, you said to me, like, love Celine like Kanye loves Kanye. you gotta love yourself. Like, love Celine like Kanye loves Kanye. I was like, oh, I get it. Okay, got it. And I remember you were talking about that. You would talk to me about my dreams and, like you said, traveling. And yeah, like there was this dissatisfaction with my life started to build, you know, it started to actually compound. And at the time I was also struggling with, an eating disorder of, you know, binge eating, emotional eating. And you were supporting me through that. And it was just compounding until it went boom. But before I talk about the boom, I want to give you a chance to step in and
I want to hear the boom.
You want me to go into the boom? Okay.
I want to hear the boom.
The boom was, I don't know if you remember, Ralph, but at the time I had a blog, which you actually mentioned. It was called The Nomad's Oasis, which later became my brand, which I've now since then retired, but it was my brand for quite a few years. And my blog, The Nomad's Oasis, was basically my fun escape, that whenever I had, you know, a weekend off, I would literally, if I had 3 days, like a long weekend, I would go off and like go to Bermuda for a few days. I would go and travel to Aruba, like anywhere that I would even fly to Europe. If I had 5 days, I would go to Europe and I would go on these beautiful travel adventures so I could get my fix. And then I would write about my experience. And, you know, my blog, the nomad's oasis, which was all around, it's pretty self-explanatory. It was my oasis. Like traveling was my magical place that I would go to for peace and refuge. And I've always felt myself to be a nomad, even when I was stable in one place. And I would blog about it, and I would really share, like, it wasn't like, oh, here's 5 things to do while you're in Aruba. It was very unique, the way that I was doing it, in the sense that I would share about the personality of that country and who I was becoming as I was there. So for example, there was a blog post that comes up to me now where I would talk about Rome and how sensual Rome was, and how every time I would walk through its streets, my senses would come alive, and I would just feel like this like gorgeous woman walking down the street, as opposed to Cartagena, Colombia. I would walk through the streets of Cartagena, and I could felt the energy of Cartagena was like this handsome South American man dressed all in white, like a very, very gentleman who would just like welcome you into a dance, like invite you to dance. Like there was these different energies that came through in every place. And I would write about that. And I remember that as I was writing this blog, and my blog did not had like a couple hundred followers, and one of my best friends who had like 70 followers on Twitter, she posted my blog. And she said, oh my God, I love this post that my friend Celine has done. Like, you definitely need to read it. And then I remember the next day, this man retweets my friend's post. And he says, this is a great blog. You should read it. And I'm like, who is this dude? And his name is Leon Ligothesis. So if you're listening to this, Leon, hi, you might be a guest in the future. And he reposts this. I'm like, who is this dude? I'm like, this guy has 50,000 followers on Twitter. Like, who is this man? And I go into a little rabbit hole. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like a full-blown author. He has a book called The Kindness Diaries, where he himself traveled the world for a year, like living on $5 a day, and just like traveling in this yellow motorbike, just traveling the world and doing kind acts for strangers. He wrote an entire book about it. Today he has a Netflix series as well. And I was like, oh my God, who are you? And I remember contacting him right away saying, hi, oh my God, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for like retweeting my blog. And he was like, you're welcome. I really love the way you write. I love what you stand for. And him and I got into conversation, and then we got on a call like a couple of weeks later, and he was just this beautiful soul that was like, he used to work in London, and he was very, very miserable. And, he was like in the rat race for 15 years before he realized, no, I can't do this. I need to do something more meaningful in my life. And having that conversation, I was like, whoa, wait, this is an option on the table. Like, this exists. You can do this. What do you mean? What do you mean you quit your corporate job and then you went traveling the world for a year and then you wrote a book about it? How is that possible? And I remember him saying to me, Celine, if I could give you any advice, this is what I would say. I left my situation because I was in so much pain that I couldn't live another day that way. Like, the reason why I took such a bold, big decision is because I was breaking from the pain, and I had to, or my life was going to end. And he meant like, it was going to end. What I would share with you is let your decision come from desire before it comes from the pain. And that really stayed with me. He's like, don't wait until that day where you're about to break. Let desire be the thing that drives you. And that was a huge mind expander. And I remember a few weeks later, he contacted me and he's like, I'm starting a foundation, and I have a pilot project where I'm going to choose a select number of people, and I'm basically going to send them to different countries to do charity work in those countries. And they're going to write about it. And basically, he offered me a scholarship to literally choose. He gave me a list of 8 countries, like cool countries, like Morocco, Laos, Cambodia, like these really exotic countries that I'd never been to before. And he said, I want you to choose one of those countries, and I'm going to send you to one of those places for 2 weeks. And what I want you to do is to give your heart, give it your all, volunteer, be there, be present, and write about it on your blog. And then we're going to repost it on our blog and contribute, like share your story of what you're experiencing, and that will be like, the quote unquote payment for me sending you there. And then he also said, in addition to that, I'm going to take, I forget, it was $1,000 or something like that. It was a sizable amount, and I'm going to donate it to a charity of your choice. And I was like, what? And so my project was, oh my God, I only have 2 weeks of vacation a year in this freaking job. And guess what I did? I took those 2 weeks, that week vacation in August of 2015. I went to Cambodia, and I was flown to Cambodia. And this is the part of my story that I actually have never told this story before. This is the first time I've shared why I went to Cambodia, because I know people might be like, oh, so you went to Cambodia to go on a volunteer trip so you could feel better about yourself. Like, there's a big narrative around that. There's a lot of criticism around this paradigm of like going and volunteering in another country. And for me, it wasn't that. It was really like, oh my God, I'm being offered this opportunity by a man I really respect and is majorly opening my mind right now. And he's giving me this opportunity to go to a country, to give back, and to also do the thing, like to literally write, to do the blog that I do on my free time. Like I get to do that full time for 2 weeks. Holy crap. What do you mean? How is that possible? And so I landed in Cambodia, and I remember landing, it was from New York, 24-hour trip to Cambodia. It's 4 a.m. I'm being driven from the cab into Cambodia, Phnom Penh. And it's like a hostel situation where all the volunteers are staying. And I'm brought into this room. It's this big room that has like 6 beds in it. But eerily enough, there is no one there because it was the weekend, and most volunteers would travel around the country during the weekend because it was the only time off. And so there's 6 beds. I sit down in this creaky little bed in this big room that is just full of people's stuff, but is empty. And I open up my phone and I turn it off of airplane mode because I didn't have service until I got connected to the Wi-Fi. And a text from my father comes in, and he says, just want to let you know that inaugural, my grandfather, has passed away this morning.
Wow.
And my grandfather is somebody that, because I didn't meet my father until I was 14, which we can share a little bit more later on, I didn't meet my biological father until I was 14 years old. I also didn't meet my grandparents. At that point, I was 24 until 5 years prior. So I'd only just started to develop a relationship with my grandparents, and I was so close to my grandpa, like so fast. He was this musician, and he spent his entire life following his vocation. Like he was so in love with his music and what he did. It was so inspiring. And he's another one of my muses when it comes to following your heart and following your passion. He would always say to me, like, first piano, then my wife. Like that would be his, because he loved his vocation, his music so much that it was his heart, and I remember like I would listen to him play for hours with tears in my eyes because he was such a beautiful player. And to this day, my alarm in the morning when I wake up, my alarm sound is his music. I wake up to his piano every morning. And I just remember being just stunned because I'm in this foreign country on the other side of the world. There's no way I'm not going to be able to go to the funeral because I've committed to being here for the next 2 weeks. And my father texted me, which in itself was because we weren't really connected back then so much. And so it was so cold. The text was so cold, and it just landed in my inbox with all my other messages, and just thinking to myself, what? Just being in total shock, just sitting on the bed and just being in shock. My nervous system just mouth agape. I don't know what to do. And I sat there for, I don't know how long, definitely a while, just sat there in shock, being like, how do I recollect myself right now? Cause I'm here and I'm here to do this trip. And it wasn't just from a space of I'm here to go on vacation and see the temples and, go hang out and eat the cool food here. I was here to teach English for 2 weeks at an orphanage Like there was a responsibility that I had committed to in this space. And I remember just after like this initial shockwave passed, just coming into my heart and just saying to myself, like, I'm committed to being here, and in honor of this man, of my grandfather, I'm gonna honor him by giving this trip everything, and by showing up for these kids, like with my heart wide open, and doing this, like really doing this with all of me, not a half-ass thing, not a, oh, cool, I got a free trip thing, but like, I am going to show up for the next 2 weeks with all of me in honor of him, so that I never forget this moment, this opportunity that I have. It's for him. I'm dedicating it for him. And fast forwarding through the trip, that's exactly what I did. I went all in. I'm like, my heart is in this. I'm leading with this, and showing up every day, like teaching these children who are my biggest teachers. They taught me so much more than I could have possibly taught them, and just being fully present for this experience and giving it my all. And at the end of those 2 weeks, that experience completely broke me open, because I was so brokenhearted already. I was so tender. And I don't think, because at the time my heart wasn't as open, because at the time I was so emotionally disconnected from myself, I do truly believe that an event that big needed to happen to literally shock me into accessing my heart space. And for me to be in my heart space for those 2 weeks completely reorganized me like a caterpillar, just reconfiguring within the cocoon. And when I got out of this cocoon, and I flew back into New York City, I remember I flew out of Phnom Penh on a Saturday and into New York on a Sunday morning. And my ex-boyfriend had picked me up, and we were walking through the park, Washington Square Park. And I'm walking through this, it's a beautiful sunny day. Like, when it's summer, it was early September, and everyone's like out with their yoga mats and their picnic, like everybody's just spread out on the grass. And I remember walking through this park feeling like an alien visiting another planet, and just walking around thinking to myself, do these people like know what they have? Do I know what I have? Because just 24 hours prior, I was walking through, the streets Saturday night through Phnom Penh, or Friday night, however the time zone works out. I was walking through the streets of Phnom Penh, and I kid you not, like the streets are littered, because Cambodia doesn't have a social welfare system, and 50%, because of the genocide that happened there in the 70s and the 80s, 50% of the population is under 21 years old. So a lot of people don't even have parents or caretakers. The streets were littered with cardboard boxes with children just sitting on these cardboard boxes, and child prostitutes like every other corner, like young girls dressed in very over sexualized manners, doing exactly what you think they're doing. And just children, like even little kids in diapers, like sitting on cardboard boxes in the middle of the street. And that was their life. That was the normal of that city. And then being like transplanted from Phnom Penh, and it's one of the poorest countries on the planet, with the atrocities that have happened, the trauma, the collective trauma of that planet, of that country, sorry. And witnessing that, feeling it, like literally being in it, as I would be teaching all these children who didn't have parents, because a lot of them were murdered in the genocide, or they were abandoned because their parents couldn't bear to take care of their kids. And then being like transplanted into one of the wealthiest cities on the planet that I happen to live in, and seeing people live the way they did, I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I don't think I can keep living my life with the blindfold over my eyes. I can't unsee what I've seen. And fast forwarding that even more, the next Monday, I come into the office, and back to work, back to the office. And we're like sitting in a meeting where a client is complaining about this slideshow that we put together, that they're paying $50,000 for, this like creative brief that we put together for them. And the client is just like really mad because the photo that we've taken is, on a paper plate, and it needed to be on a China plate because, they're targeting, it was on a China plate, and it needed to be on a cheaper plate because they're targeting an African American, community for their marketing, and they needed the plates to look cheaper. And I was like, oh, hell no. I cannot be in this room fucking participating in this. Are you kidding me? This is the conversation that we're having while I know that there's like a kid on the other side of the planet starving right now, like sitting on a cardboard box, and we're literally having an argument over a photo shoot that costs $4,000. And it's like the plate's it's not cheap enough because you're making all these projections and judgments on your target audience. Hell no. Hell no.
Man.
And it was a breaking point for me. And I just remember from that day, I was like, oh, hell no, I can't do this. And from there, I just had this moment, this breakage in my psyche that said it was a complete defrag. And fast forward then, in the next 3 months, my life started to just completely fall apart. Within a 3-month period of that day, I thought I was going to be a shoo-in for a promotion in that company, and I didn't get it, and I was pissed. And not only that, because I didn't get the promotion, I didn't get the salary raise, which meant that the apartment that I was living in, I was counting on that raise for me to be able to live in that apartment. This was October, and it was, I had the lease through April, but I realized I was not going to be able to renew, and I was not going to be able to afford living in New York City with that current salary. And not only that, but my ex-boyfriend broke up with me the day before my 25th birthday. And I'm like, my life is falling apart. All right, friends, we are coming up to the end of episode 1, but don't worry, the story is not over. It is far from over. And this is why this is a 3-part series of getting to know your host, also me, Celinne Da Costa. So your next step is to tune into episode 2, where I'm going to go deeper into my couch surfing journey around the world and what happened next that allowed me to launch what is now my coaching career. So please tune in to the next episode, and I will see you then.